They say kindness is weakness in the Northlands, where winter devours the foolish and mercy gets you killed. But Alara Voss had learned that survival wasn't about being cruel, it was about being invisible, forgotten, erased from memory like footprints in fresh snow. The storm hit Frostholm village 3 hours before sunset, turning the sky into a wall of white violence. Alara pulled her threadbare cloak tighter as she hurried through the blizzard, basket of herbs clutched against her chest. 5 years. 5 long years since she'd fled the capital city of Argentfall. Since she'd watched her family burn for crimes they didn't commit. Since she'd stolen her younger brother Cass and disappeared into the northern wilderness. No one in Frostholm knew her real name. To them, she was simply the healer's daughter. A quiet girl of 22 who kept her head down, never asked questions, and possessed an uncanny ability with medicinal plants. They didn't know that her mother had been the royal physician to the previous king, or that her father had been accused of poisoning him. They didn't know that somewhere in Argentfall, wanted posters still bore her face with a price that could buy a small manor. She'd learned to make herself small, forgettable. She wore drab colors, spoke in whispers, and avoided eye contact. She'd cut her distinctive silver blonde hair short and dyed it mousy brown with walnut husks. She hunched her shoulders to hide her height. Most importantly, she never, ever used the gift that ran in her bloodline, the ability to sense and manipulate life force itself, a power so rare that only 3 families in the kingdom had ever possessed it. Her small cottage sat at the village's edge, deliberately isolated. Cass was supposed to be home by now, back from his apprenticeship at the blacksmith's. At 15, he was finally old enough to work, to help them survive this endless hiding. She pushed open the door, snow swirling around her ankles. Cass? The cottage was dark, empty. Fear spiked through her chest. She moved through their 2 rooms, checking, hoping. Nothing. He probably got caught in the storm, she told herself. He's sheltering at the smithy. But the fear didn't leave. It never did. Every unexpected absence brought visions of soldiers, of discovery, of iron chains. That's when she heard it. A sound that didn't belong to the storm. A whimper, barely audible beneath the wind's howl. Alara froze at her door, every instinct screaming at her to ignore it, to stay safe, to remain invisible. Getting involved meant exposure. It meant risk. But the sound came again, weaker this time, and her healer's heart betrayed her survival instincts. She grabbed her lantern and stepped back into the blizzard. The sound led her behind her cottage, where the forest pressed close. And there, collapsed against her woodpile, lay the largest wolf she'd ever seen. Its fur was black as midnight, matted with blood that steamed in the frozen air. 3 arrows protruded from its side. Iron-tipped arrows, she realized with horror. The kind specifically designed to kill shifters, preventing their healing, slowly poisoning them from within. The wolf's eyes opened as her lantern light fell across it. Not yellow or amber like normal wolves, but a deep, startling blue that held far too much intelligence, too much human awareness. Those eyes found hers, and in them she saw recognition, desperation, and something else. Something that made her breath catch. The wolf knew her. Alara's mind raced through possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. Werewolves didn't come this far north. The pack stayed in the southern territories where the Alpha King ruled from Silverpine Keep, maintaining the fragile peace between humans and shifters. But this was no ordinary werewolf. The sheer size of it, the unusual eye color, the way it looked at her, like it could see straight through her carefully constructed disguise. "This is madness," she whispered to herself, but her hands were already moving. She couldn't leave any creature to die, not even one that might expose her. Not when those blue eyes held such desperate pleading. She ran back inside, grabbed every blanket she owned, and returned to the wolf. "I'm going to help you," she said softly, though she knew it could understand her perfectly. "But if you survive this, you tell no one where you've been. No one can know I exist. Do you understand?" The wolf's eyes closed once in what could only be agreement. The next hour was a nightmare of blood and desperation. Alara couldn't bring the massive wolf inside. It had to weigh at least 200 pounds, so she created a shelter against her cottage wall using boards and blankets, blocking the wind. Her hands shook as she examined the arrows. Iron poisoning was spreading through its system. She could sense it with the gift she'd sworn never to use again. But sensing wasn't the same as healing. She could feel the wolf's life force guttering like a candle in the wind, could sense how the iron burned through its blood. If she only sensed, only observed, perhaps it wouldn't count as truly using her power. Perhaps no one would notice. The arrows had to come out. Alara worked by lantern light, the storm creating a curtain of privacy around them. She'd removed arrows from humans before, but never from a shifter, never with iron poisoning racing against time. The wolf remained perfectly still, though she felt its body quake with suppressed agony as she extracted each arrow. "I'm sorry," she murmured, pressing moss and comfrey poultices against the wounds. "I'm so sorry." When the third arrow came free, the wolf's eyes rolled back and it went limp. Panic seized Alara's chest. She pressed her hand against its massive chest, feeling for a heartbeat. There. Faint. Irregular. Failing. No. Not like this. Not when she'd already risked so much. Before she could stop herself, before logic could override instinct, Ilara closed her eyes and let her gift unfurl. It rushed through her like a river breaking through a dam, 5 years of suppression releasing in a flood of golden warmth. She felt the wolf's life force, saw the iron poison spreading like black veins through brilliant silver light. She couldn't heal directly. That would leave traces, marks that witch hunters could follow. But she could encourage, support, guide the wolf's own regenerative abilities. She worked in desperate silence, sweat mixing with snow on her face despite the cold, pouring every ounce of skill into saving this creature. The iron poison was too advanced. Even a shifter's supernatural healing couldn't overcome it without help. She felt the moment the tide turned, when the wolf's own power surged in response to her guidance, burning through the remaining poison. The wolf's breathing steadied. Its heartbeat strengthened. Ilara pulled her gift back carefully, severing the connection before any traces could linger. She slumped against the cottage wall, utterly exhausted. "You'll live," she whispered. "Now please, when dawn comes, leave. Forget you ever saw me." She didn't go inside. Instead, she sat beside the unconscious wolf, keeping watch through the long night as the storm raged on. Somewhere around midnight she dozed off, her head resting against the creature's warm flank, lulled by its steady breathing. She never saw its eyes open in the darkness, never saw the way they watched her with wonder and recognition, never heard the single word it couldn't speak in this form. "Found you." Dawn broke clear and brutally cold. Alara woke to stillness. The storm had passed, leaving the world buried in fresh snow that sparkled like crushed diamonds. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was or why she was freezing. Then she felt the warmth against her back, saw the makeshift shelter, remembered the wolf. She turned, expecting to find the massive black creature still unconscious. Instead, she found herself staring at a man. Alara scrambled backward with a strangled gasp, heart hammering against her ribs. The man lay where the wolf had been, naked except for the blankets she'd piled on the animal, his body bearing 3 angry red scars where the arrows had pierced. His skin was bronze despite the winter season, marked with ritual tattoos that swirled across his shoulders and chest. Pack markings, she realized with growing horror. Alpha pack markings. But it was his face that stopped her breath. Strong, angular features that belonged on ancient coins, black hair that fell past his shoulders, and even in sleep, an undeniable aura of power that made the air around him feel heavier, more significant. His eyes opened and Alara's world tilted. The same impossible blue, now framed by thick lashes, looking at her with an intensity that made her feel transparent. He sat up slowly, ignoring his nakedness, ignoring the cold, his gaze never leaving her face. "Ilara Voss," he said, and his voice was like distant thunder, rich and deep. "I've been searching for you for 5 years." Every drop of blood drained from Ilara's face. No one knew that name anymore. No one should know that name. She bolted to her feet, backing toward her cottage door, mind racing through impossible escape routes. He knew. He knew who she was, what she was running from. "How?" Her voice cracked. "Who are you?" The man stood, water smooth despite his injuries, and Alara realized with sinking dread just how tall he was, easily 6.5 feet, built like violence wrapped in skin. He reached for his discarded clothes. No, she realized, there were no clothes. They must have shredded during his shift. "I am Demon Silverclaw," he said, each word deliberate, "Alpha King of the Western Territories, and you, Ilara Voss, are the daughter of the only woman who could have saved my father's life." The world spun. The Alpha King. She'd sheltered the Alpha King, the most powerful shifter in 5 kingdoms, the one person who could command armies with a word, who could have her executed for treason against the crown with a snap of his fingers. My mother didn't. She tried to save him," Ilara stammered, still backing away. "They accused her of murder, but she was trying to heal him. We're not traitors." "I know." His words stopped her retreat. "I've always known. That's why I've been searching for you." Ilara's mind couldn't process this. 5 years of hiding, 5 years of fear, and the one person who could destroy her completely was standing in her makeshift shelter claiming he'd been looking for her. "Why?" Demon took a step closer and Ilara saw something flicker across his face. Pain, perhaps, or memory. "Because the same poison that killed my father is killing me, and you're the only one with the gift to stop it." Ilara's laugh came out sharp and bitter. "You've found the wrong person. I'm just a healer's apprentice. I know herbs and bandages, nothing more." "Don't." The command in his voice made her freeze mid-step. Not an alpha order. Those could compel obedience from other wolves, but something else. Authority earned through years of leadership. "I felt what you did last night. I felt your gift guiding my healing, fighting the iron poison. You have your mother's power, Ilara. Perhaps even stronger." "I don't know what you're talking about." But her voice wavered, and they both knew it. Demon moved toward the cottage, and Ilara's protective instincts flared. "Stop! You can't go in there. You need to leave, now, before someone sees you, before someone realizes the Alpha King spent the night at your cottage." His smile was grim. "Too late for that, I'm afraid. Your village headman is currently riding toward Silverpine Keep to report a massive black wolf spotted during the storm. By noon, every pack enforcer in the territory will descend on Frostholm." Horror crystallized in Ilara's chest. "No. No. You have to go. They'll find me. They'll connect." She pressed her hands against her temples, trying to think through the panic. 5 years of careful invisibility, destroyed in one night of stupid compassion. "I need clothes," Demon said calmly. "And we need to talk before my people arrive. May I come inside?" Every instinct screamed no. But what choice did she have? A naked Alpha King stood in her yard in broad daylight. At least inside they'd have a few moments before discovery. She nodded once, sharply, and pushed open her cottage door. The small space felt impossibly cramped with demon inside it. He moved to her fireplace, nursing the embers back to life with practiced ease while she rummaged through Cass's chest for clothes. Her brother was tall for 15, but nothing would fit properly. She tossed trousers and a tunic at the Alpha King, then turned her back while he dressed. "Where's your brother?" Demon asked, and Alara spun around. "How do you know about Cass?" "I know everything about you, Alara." He was dressed now, the borrowed clothes straining across his shoulders. "I know you fled Argentfall the night your parents were executed. I know you've been dyeing your hair brown when it's actually the color of moonlight. I know you have a gift that could change everything about how we treat illness and injury in the kingdom. And I know," his voice softened, "I know you've been terrified and alone for 5 years because of my father's death." Tears burned behind Alara's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "If you know all that, then you know I can't help you. If I use my gift, they'll find me. The Royal Inquisitors have witch hunters specifically trained to track life magic. That's why I ran, why I've stayed hidden. One use of real power and they'll descend like locusts. What if I could offer you protection?" Demon stepped closer, his presence overwhelming in the small space. "What if I could give you and your brother immunity, safety, a life where you don't have to hide?" "In exchange for what? Healing a poison you say is killing you?" Alara shook her head. "Even if I wanted to help, I don't know how. My mother never got to teach me advanced techniques. I was 17 when she died." "Then you'll learn. I have access to the royal archives, to texts your mother never saw." His blue eyes held desperate hope. "Ilara, I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to survive, because whether you help me or not, my people will be here by midday, and they will discover you. Your only choices are to come with me willingly, under my protection, or be dragged back to Argentfall in chains." The cottage door burst open. Cass stood in the doorway, covered in snow, his young face flushed with cold and panic. "Alara, there are soldiers coming up the mountain road. At least 20 of them. We need to—" He saw Demon and froze. "Who are you?" Demon looked at Alara, one eyebrow raised. "Your choice," his expression said. "Safety or chains?" Alara looked at her brother, too young, too afraid, deserving so much better than this endless running. She thought of 5 years sleeping with one eye open, 5 years suppressing the gift that sang in her blood, 5 years of half-living in the shadows. "We're going with him," she said quietly. "Pack quickly. Everything important." "Ilara." "Now, Cass." Her brother disappeared into his room, and Alara turned to Demon. "If you're lying to me, if this is some trap—" "It isn't." He crossed to her window, looking out at the forest. "You saved my life last night. I don't take that lightly. You and your brother will be under my personal protection. No one, not the Inquisitors, not the Royal Council, not even the Human King himself, will touch you." "Why?" the question burst out. "Why do you care? You're the Alpha King. You could command any healer in the kingdom." Demon turned from the window, and the look in his blue eyes made her breath catch. "Because last night, while you thought I was unconscious, I felt something I've never felt before. When your gift touched mine, when our life forces connected." He paused, seeming to struggle for words. "My wolf recognized you, Alara, not as a healer, as something far more dangerous and impossible." Before she could ask what he meant, the sound of horses reached them. The soldiers had arrived faster than expected. Demon moved to the door with predatory grace. "Stay inside, let me handle this." But Ilara grabbed his arm, the first time she'd willingly touched him since last night. "Wait. If they see you, if they connect you to me, they already have." His smile was sharp. "Why do you think they're here? Someone in your village recognized me despite the shift. Now we see if my authority is enough to keep you safe, or if we have to run." He stepped outside, and Alara's world balanced on a knife's edge. Through the window, she watched the Alpha King face down a squad of his own enforcers, knowing that her fate, and Cass's, rested entirely in the hands of the dying wolf she'd saved from the storm. The lead enforcer was a woman who looked carved from iron, tall, broad-shouldered, with silver streaks in her black hair and scars crossing her face like a map of violence. She dismounted from her horse with military precision, her squad fanning out behind her, every one of them armed with iron-tipped weapons. "Your Majesty." Her voice cut through the cold air. "We received word of an unregistered wolf in the territory. By law, we must investigate." Her eyes flickered to Alara's cottage, cold calculation in their depths. "And we must inspect any dwellings that may have harbored it." Demon stood between them and the door, radiating authority despite wearing borrowed clothes. "Captain Vex, your diligence is noted. The unregistered wolf was me. There is nothing to investigate." Vex's expression didn't change, but something sharp entered her gaze. "With respect, Your Majesty, you were not scheduled to be in the Northern Territories, and there are protocols, which I am not required to follow." Demon's voice dropped to a dangerous rumble. "I go where I please in my own lands, Captain. Or have you forgotten the hierarchy?" A tense silence fell. Alara watched from the window, heart hammering while Cass pressed close beside her. The enforcers were loyal to the Alpha King, but they served something larger. The law, the system, the rigid structure that kept humans and shifters from tearing each other apart. Then another horse appeared on the road. This one bearing a rider in pure white robes marked with silver sigils. Alara's blood turned to ice. She recognized those robes. Everyone in the former kingdom recognized them. "A royal inquisitor," Cass whispered, terrified. "Alara, we have to run. We have to." "We can't." She gripped his hand. "We'd never make it past the enforcers." The inquisitor dismounted with fluid grace, pulling back his hood to reveal a face that belonged in nightmares, beautiful and terrible, with colorless eyes that seemed to see through flesh to the soul beneath. He was younger than Alara expected, perhaps 30, with white blonde hair and skin so pale it was almost translucent. "Alpha King Demon." His voice was soft, almost musical. "How fortuitous. I was just coming to investigate reports of illegal magic use in this region." Demon didn't move, but Alara felt the temperature drop. "Inquisitor Cassius, I wasn't aware the Order had jurisdiction in shifter territories." "We don't, typically." Cassius smiled, and it was like watching a snake decide whether to strike. "But when life magic is detected, the kind that was supposedly eradicated 5 years ago, we go where the trail leads. Royal decree. You remember the decree? Yes? The one signed by both the Human King and the Alpha Council after the royal physician's unfortunate treason? There was no treason. A matter of perspective." Cassius turned his unsettling gaze toward the cottage, and Alara instinctively stepped back from the window. "But the law is clear. Anyone practicing life magic without authorization is to be brought before the Royal Inquisition for examination, and my instruments detected a significant surge of such magic last night, emanating from this very cottage." Alara's world contracted to a pinpoint. They knew. Somehow they knew. All her caution, all her care, undone by one moment of compassion. "Your instruments are malfunctioning," Demon said flatly. "There is no life magic here." "Then you won't mind if we search the premises." Cassius gestured to his escorts, 4 more white-robed figures who carried crystals that pulsed with sickly light. "Standard procedure. Unless..." His smile sharpened. "Unless you're hiding something, Your Majesty?" The trap was elegant and obvious. If Demon refused, he looked guilty, potentially harboring a fugitive. If he allowed the search, they'd find Alara, connect her to her mother, drag her back to Argentfall in chains. There was no winning move, except Demon didn't play by their rules. Captain Vex, he said, his voice carrying absolute command. Arrest Inquisitor Cassius and his men for trespassing on Sovereign Pact territory without proper authorization. The clearing erupted in chaos. Vex's enforcers moved with trained precision, but the Inquisitors were ready, crystals blazing to life. Magic crackled through the air, not life magic, but something older, darker, binding magic that made the enforcers stumble. Cassius remained perfectly calm, even as iron chains appeared in Vex's hands. Your Majesty, this is a mistake. The treaty clearly states, the treaty allows inquisitors to pursue fugitives, not to conduct fishing expeditions in packlands. Demon's eyes blazed with blue fire. You have no evidence, no warrant, and no authority here. You will leave. Now. We have this. Cassius pulled out a small crystal sphere that glowed with golden light. A tracer, Alara realized with horror. The kind that stored residual magical signatures. This crystal holds the exact signature of the life magic used last night, and it matches perfectly with the signature of the former royal physician Marissa Voss. No. No, no, no. Which proves nothing, Demon said, but Alara heard the slight waver in his certainty. Marissa Voss is dead, but her daughter isn't. Cassius's colorless eyes found the cottage window, found Alara's face pressed against the glass. Hello, Alara. We've been looking for you for a very long time. Alara stumbled back from the window, pulling Cass with her. We have to run. Out the back, through the forest. They'll catch us. Cass was shaking. Alara, they'll catch us and they'll... The cottage door opened. Demon stepped inside, his expression grim. Behind him, the standoff continued. Vex's enforcers holding position against the Inquisitor's magic. Neither side willing to strike first and start a war. I can still protect you, Demon said quietly, but you have to trust me, completely. How? Alara's voice broke. They have proof. They have... There's one way to put you beyond their reach. One law that even the Royal Inquisition cannot override. He moved closer, and Alara saw something in his eyes. Desperation, determination, and something that looked almost like regret. You have to let me claim you, officially, in front of witnesses. Alara's mind reeled. Claim me? I'm not a... I don't... An alpha's mate is sacred under pack law. Untouchable. The Inquisition cannot arrest or interrogate a claimed mate without the alpha's permission. His hands came up, framing her face with surprising gentleness. It's the only legal protection strong enough to shield you from them. But I'm human. Humans can't be... Rare, but not illegal. And you're not entirely human, Alara. Your gift comes from somewhere. Some distant magical bloodline. That's enough. His thumb brushed her cheek, and she felt something electric pass between them. The question is, do you trust me enough to do this? Outside, Cassius's voice rang out. Your Majesty, you're harboring a fugitive. The law demands... Demon's jaw clenched. They're not going to wait much longer. Decide now, Alara. My protection or their mercy. What mercy they have. Alara looked at Cass, terrified and too young. She thought of her mother burning, her father's screams, 5 years of running. Then she looked at Demon, this impossible alpha who'd somehow found her, who claimed she was more than a fugitive, who offered protection at a cost she didn't fully understand. What do I have to do? She whispered. Relief flooded his features. Just say yes, and don't pull away. He took her hand and led her to the door. Alara's legs felt like water, but she forced herself forward. Cass followed close behind, his young face set with determination. They stepped outside into the winter morning, and every eye turned to them. Vex's enforcers, weapons drawn, Cassius and his inquisitors, crystals blazing. And at the center, the Alpha King holding the hand of a fugitive healer. Inquisitor Cassius, Demon's voice carried across the clearing, formal and absolute. I am invoking the right of sacred claiming under the authority of the Alpha Council and the Moon Covenant. Witness and record. I, Demon Silverclaw, Alpha King of the Western Territories, claim Alara Voss as my mate and equal. She is under my protection, my authority, and my law. Any who challenge this claim challenge me directly. The words hung in the frozen air like a pronouncement of fate. Cassius's face went white with rage. You can't. This is transparent manipulation of— The law is the law, Inquisitor. Demon pulled Alara against his side, and she felt the tremors running through him. Not fear, but barely contained power. Unless you'd like to formally challenge an Alpha's claim, I believe the penalty for that is death. A long, terrible silence. Then Cassius smiled, cold and vicious. No challenge, for now. But hear me, Your Majesty. A mate bond cannot be faked indefinitely. The moon will know if this is false, and when she reveals the truth, not even you can protect her. He mounted his horse, his inquisitors following suit. But before leaving, he turned back one last time. Oh, and Your Majesty, you might want to ask your new mate about the real reason her mother died, about what she discovered in the old king's blood, about who actually poisoned him. His colorless eyes found Alara's. Some truths are more dangerous than any magic. Then he was gone, taking his escorts and his threats with him, leaving Alara standing in the snow beside the Alpha King who'd just claimed her as his mate, wondering what she'd just agreed to and what secrets were still waiting to destroy her. The journey to Silverpine Keep took 3 days through winter mountains that tested even shifter endurance. Demon had provided horses, supplies, and an escort of 6 loyal enforcers, but the atmosphere remained tense. Alara could feel the guards watching her, judging, questioning why their Alpha King had claimed a human, a fugitive human, so publicly and dramatically. Cass rode close beside her, silent and withdrawn since leaving Frostholm. At night, when they camped in caves or abandoned way stations, he'd whisper, "We could still run. We could disappear again." But they both knew it was too late for that. Alara had been claimed. The entire kingdom would know by now. And whatever Demon's true motives, running would only make them both look guilty. Demon himself remained distant during the journey, riding ahead with Captain Vex, deep in conversation that looked increasingly heated. Alara caught fragments. The council won't accept this. Inquisitors will demand proof. Putting your throne at risk for a girl you barely know. That last one stung more than it should have. Because Vex was right. Demon had risked everything to protect her, and Alara had no idea why. The claim he'd made wasn't real. Couldn't be real. Mate bonds were sacred, mystical things that happen between souls. You couldn't fake them any more than you could fake breathing. So what was his game? On the second night, while Cass slept and the guards changed watch, Alara found Demon standing at the cave entrance, staring out at the moonlit peaks. She approached carefully, still not sure how to act around him. "Can't sleep." His voice was soft, private. "Too many questions." Alara wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. "Why did you really claim me? And don't say it was just to protect me. You could have found other ways." Demon was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of admission. "I told you my wolf recognized you. That wasn't a metaphor, Alara. When you healed me, when our life forces connected, my wolf felt something it had never felt before. It felt complete." Alara's breath caught. "That's not possible. I'm human. Mostly human. We can't— I know what the laws of nature say. I know what should and shouldn't be possible." He turned to face her, and in the moonlight his eyes glowed faintly blue. "But my wolf doesn't lie, and it's been restless for 5 years, searching for something, someone. Then I caught your scent in that storm. followed it to your cottage, and everything clicked into place. So you think I'm your mate? Truly. The word felt strange in her mouth, too large, too significant. I think something connects us, something more than chance or politics. His hand came up, hovering near her face but not quite touching. When I'm near you, the poison in my blood quiets. The pain that's been eating me alive for 5 years, it dulls. That's not nothing, Alara. She'd felt it too, she realized. That strange pull, that sense of rightness when he was close. She'd attributed it to fear, to stress, to the surreal nature of their circumstances. But what if it was more? The Inquisitor said something, she began hesitantly, about my mother discovering something in your father's blood. Do you know what he meant? Demon's expression shuddered. We should discuss that later, when we're safe. We might not have a later. If Cassius is right, if the moon reveals our bond is false, then we'll deal with it then. But his tone suggested he was worried about the same thing. For now, try to rest. Tomorrow we reach Silverpine Keep, and everything becomes much more complicated. He was right about that. Silverpine Keep rose from the mountainside like a crown of stone and silver, its towers reaching toward the sky, its walls thick enough to withstand dragon fire according to legend. As they approached through the main gates, Alara saw crowds lining the streets, wolves in human form, human merchants, mixed families, all of them staring at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility. The Alpha King returns, someone shouted, and the cry was taken up across the courtyard. But Alara heard the whispers underneath. Is that her? The fugitive. Claimed her right in front of the Inquisitors. Scandal. Cass pressed close to her side, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the keep and the attention. Demon dismounted and immediately moved to help Alara down from her horse, the gesture protective and public. His hand lingered on her waist and she saw people noticing, judging, recording every detail. Stay close, he murmured. The council is going to demand an immediate audience. Let me do the talking. But before they could enter the keep, a voice rang out across the courtyard. Demon Silverclaw, you are summoned before the Alpha Council to answer for your actions. A group of older wolves emerged from the main hall, 7 of them, representing the major packs of the Western Territories. They wore ceremonial robes marked with pack sigils, and their faces were uniformly displeased. At their center stood a woman who made Captain Vex look soft, ancient, scarred, with white hair and eyes like flint. Elder Mordain, Demon said calmly, though Alara felt him tense. I was planning to address the council after. Now. The elder's voice cracked like a whip. You've created a political incident, claimed a human fugitive wanted by the Royal Inquisition, and potentially violated a dozen treaties. The council will hear your explanation immediately. The crowd pressed closer, eager for drama. Alara wanted to disappear, to fold into herself and become invisible like she'd learned to do. But Diamond's hand found hers, squeezing once. Trust me. Very well. Demon's voice carried across the courtyard. The council will hear me, and they will hear my mate. A collective gasp. Using that word so publicly, so officially, made it impossible to take back. Elder Mordain's eyes narrowed. If she's truly your mate, the bond will be verified. The Moon Priestess is already preparing the ritual. If you're lying to protect a criminal, the consequences will be severe. For both of you. Alara's stomach dropped. She'd heard of verification rituals, ancient ceremonies that could supposedly prove or disprove a mate bond. She had no idea what they involved, but the grim satisfaction on Mordain's face suggested it wasn't pleasant. They were led into the Great Hall, a massive chamber with vaulted ceilings and walls covered in pack histories. The council sat in a semicircle on an elevated platform, with Demon and Alara standing below like defendants. Cass was relegated to the side with other non-essential personnel, looking terrified. The trial, because that's what it was, began with Elder Mordain listing charges: harboring a fugitive, interfering with royal inquisitors, making a fraudulent mate claim, endangering pack relations with the human kingdom. Demon countered each charge with legal precision, citing precedents and treaty clauses that Alara didn't understand. He was magnificent, she realized, commanding without arrogance, intelligent without condescension. This was the Alpha King in his element, the leader who'd held together a fractious alliance for 5 years. But the council wasn't impressed. "Even if your claim is legitimate," another elder said, "the girl is wanted for crimes against the crown. We cannot harbor her indefinitely. She committed no crimes. Her mother committed no crimes." Demon's voice hardened. They were scapegoats for a murder they didn't commit. "Can you prove that?" Mordain challenged. "Yes." The single word rang through the hall. "Because I know who actually killed my father. And so did Alara's mother. That's why she was executed. Not for treason, but for discovering the truth." Shocked murmurs rippled through the council. Alara's head spun. Her mother had known, and never said. "That's a serious accusation," Mordain said carefully. "Who do you claim murdered the old king?" Demon's jaw clenched. "I have evidence, but I need time to compile it. Give me 1 month to prove Alara's innocence and expose the real conspiracy. If I fail, I'll turn her over to the Inquisitors myself." The council exchanged glances. Finally, Mordain nodded. 1 month. But first, the verification ritual. Tonight, under the full moon. If the bond is false, she goes to the Inquisitors immediately. Agreed? Demon looked at Alara, a question in his eyes. She had no idea what this ritual involved, but she nodded. They'd come too far to back down now. Agreed, Demon said. As the council dismissed them, Alara felt the walls of the trap closing in. Tonight, under the full moon, magic would either confirm or destroy the claim that protected her. And she had no idea which outcome terrified her more. They gave Alara chambers in the royal wing, a suite of rooms larger than her entire cottage, with windows overlooking the mountain peaks and furnishings that cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. Servants arrived with clothes, food, and barely concealed curiosity. Cass was given an adjoining room, and for the first time since leaving Frostholm, they were alone. "This is insane," Cass said, pacing the ornate carpet. "A verification ritual? Alara, what if they can tell the bond is fake? What if—" "I don't think it's fake." The words surprised her as much as him. Cass stopped pacing. "What?" Alara sank onto an embroidered chair, exhaustion finally catching up. "When I healed him, when our life forces connected, I felt something. Like recognition. Like coming home to a place I'd never been." She looked at her brother. "What if Demon's right? What if there is something real between us?" "You've known him for 3 days. Mother used to say that souls recognize each other instantly. That mate bonds don't follow logic or time." Alara rubbed her temples. "I thought she was being romantic. But now—" A knock interrupted them. A young servant girl entered, curtsying nervously. "My lady, the Alpha King requests your presence in his private study. He says it's urgent." Alara exchanged a glance with Cass, then followed the servant through winding corridors to a tower study. Demon stood at a window, still wearing his formal council attire, staring at the rising moon with an expression of deep concern. "You wanted to see me?" He turned, and Alara saw the strain in his face, the shadows under his eyes. "The verification ritual," he began without preamble. "I need you to understand what it involves before you agree." "I already agreed." "You agreed before knowing the details." He moved closer, and she caught the scent of him. Pine and winter air and something wild. The Moon Priestess will use ancient magic to examine our bond. She'll look inside both of us, at our souls, our life forces. It's invasive, painful sometimes, and it reveals everything, every secret, every fear, every hidden truth. Alara's breath caught. Everything? She'll see your gift, what you are, what you're capable of. She'll see my curse, my father's poison, all of it. His hands clenched at his sides. I won't force you to undergo that. If you want to run, if you want to take Cass and disappear, I'll give you horses, supplies, a head start before the Inquisitors. Stop. Alara stepped forward, surprising herself with her certainty. I'm not running anymore. I'm tired of being afraid, tired of hiding what I am. She met his eyes. If the ritual shows I'm your mate, then we face whatever comes together. If it shows I'm not, she swallowed hard. Then at least I'll know the truth. Something shifted in Demon's expression. Relief, admiration, and something deeper. You're braver than you know. Or more foolish. She tried for a smile. You still haven't told me everything about your father's murder, about what my mother discovered. If we're going into this ritual together, I deserve the whole truth. Demon was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. He moved to his desk, unlocking a drawer and pulling out a leather-bound journal. Your mother kept records, secret ones. She gave them to me 3 days before she was arrested. Alara's heart stuttered. What? She knew she was in danger, knew someone wanted her silenced. He handed her the journal. She discovered that my father wasn't poisoned with a single toxin. It was a combination. 1 part standard poison, 1 part magical corruption, designed to look like natural illness. And it came from someone close to him, someone in the royal household. Alara opened the journal with trembling hands. Her mother's familiar handwriting covered the pages. Observations, theories, chemical analyses. And there, near the end, the poison required access to both common and rare ingredients. Only 3 people in the kingdom could have created this specific combination. The list that followed made Alara's blood run cold. The royal alchemist, she whispered. The king's personal physician and... She looked up at Demon in horror. Elder Mordain. She was my father's most trusted advisor, Demon said bitterly. When he died, she pushed hardest for me to take the throne early, before I was ready. She also led the investigation that blamed your mother. So she could cover her own crime? Understanding crystallized. But why kill your father? Control. My father was planning reforms, giving more rights to humans in pact territories, opening trade with the southern kingdoms. Mordain and the traditionalists opposed him. Demon's fists clenched. They wanted a younger, more malleable king. They got me. Except you weren't malleable. No. And Mordain has been trying to undermine me ever since. He met her eyes. That's the real reason she's pushing this verification ritual so hard. If she can prove our bond is false, she can discredit me, possibly even challenge my right to rule. Alara's mind raced. So tonight isn't just about proving our bond. It's about political survival. Yes, and there's more. Demon moved closer, his expression grave. The poison that killed my father? It's the same one slowly killing me. Mordain has been dosing me for 5 years, probably hoping I'd die before discovering the truth. But then I found you. And your gift started healing me without either of us realizing it. The pieces fell into place. That's why the pain dulled when I was near you. Why you survived the iron arrows that should have killed you. Your life magic counteracts the poison. You're the only thing keeping me alive. He took her hands, and Alara felt that electric pull between them, stronger now. Mordain knows this, or suspects it. She'll use the ritual to try to separate us, to cut off my only protection. We need to be prepared for her to manipulate the results. Can she do that? Manipulate a sacred ritual? I don't know, but I know she's desperate. His thumbs traced circles on her palms, the gesture unconsciously intimate. Ilara, I need you to understand something. Whether the moon recognizes our bond or not, whether this is fate or coincidence, I'm grateful you exist. You gave me hope when I had none. The words settled into her chest, warm and terrifying. What if the ritual shows we're not mates? What if... Then we make a different choice. His voice was firm. The moon doesn't dictate our lives. We do. Before Ilara could respond, bells began to toll across the keep. Midnight. Time for the ritual. They walked to the ceremony together, through halls filled with watching eyes. The verification would take place in the moon garden, an ancient courtyard open to the sky, where pale flowers bloomed year-round and silver pools reflected starlight. The entire council was assembled, along with nobles, warriors, and pack members who'd earned the right to witness. At the center stood the moon priestess, an elderly woman in silver robes, blind eyes turned upward to the full moon, hands raised in supplication. Around her, a circle of white stones glowed with accumulated moonlight. "Enter," she commanded, her voice surprisingly strong. Demon and Ilara stepped into the circle. Immediately, Ilara felt something change. The air grew thicker, charged with power that made her skin prickle. The moon priestess began to chant in an ancient language, and the stones blazed brighter. "Give me your hands," the priestess ordered. "Both of you." They obeyed. The priestess took their joined hands in hers, and Ilara gasped as magic surged through her. Not painful, but overwhelming, like being immersed in light. She felt the priestess's consciousness brush against hers, felt her secrets being examined, her gift being assessed. Then the priestess delved deeper, and Ilara felt Demon's presence like she'd never felt anything before. She was inside his mind, his heart, his soul. She felt his loneliness, the crushing weight of a crown he'd never wanted. She felt his grief for his father, his rage at Mordaine's betrayal. And underneath it all, she felt his wolf, ancient, powerful, and utterly focused on her. "Mine," the wolf growled. "Ours, mate." But Ilara also felt his doubt, his fear that he was being selfish, trapping her with a claim she didn't choose. She felt his determination to give her freedom even if it cost him everything. And through it all, she felt the poison, black tendrils winding through his life force, slowly strangling him. 5 years of invisible murder. Without thinking, Ilara reached out with her gift. She poured healing light into those dark spaces, burning away poison, strengthening his failing life force. She felt his shock, his wonder, as strength flooded back into him. Then his wolf reached back, wrapping around her with protective fury. Where her gift touched him, his power answered, creating a circuit of energy that spiraled between them, growing. Stronger, brighter, until... The circle exploded with light. Ilara and Demon were thrown apart, landing on stone that suddenly felt scorching hot. The assembled crowd gasped as symbols appeared on the courtyard floor. Ancient pack markings that hadn't been seen in centuries, glowing with silver fire. The moon priestess stood in the center, her blind eyes blazing with reflected light. When she spoke, her voice echoed with divine authority. The moon recognizes this bond. Not created, but discovered. Not chosen, but destined. These two souls are bound by threads older than the packs, stronger than law. She turned her blazing gaze toward the council. "Elder Mordain, you sought to expose falsehood. Instead, you have revealed truth. Demon Silverclaw and Ilara Voss are true mates, blessed by the moon herself." The crowd erupted, some in celebration, others in shock, and a few in clear dismay. But Ilara barely heard it. She was staring at Demon across the glowing circle, seeing him truly for the first time. Not the Alpha King, not her protector, but her mate, the other half of her soul. And in his eyes, she saw the same revelation, the same wonder, the same terrifying certainty. Everything had just changed. The celebration after the verification ritual was mandatory but tense. Nobles and pack members who'd opposed the claiming now had to publicly acknowledge the moon's judgment, though their resentment was palpable. Ilara stood beside Demon at the high table, wearing borrowed finery that felt like a costume, trying not to drown in the scrutiny of hundreds of eyes. Cass sat nearby, looking equally uncomfortable in formal clothes, picking at food he was too nervous to eat. But at least he was safe. The mate bond verification meant he was family now, under pack protection. No inquisitor could touch him. "You're doing well," Demon murmured, his hand finding hers under the table. The touch sent that now familiar electric current through her. The mate bond, she realized. Real, undeniable, and utterly overwhelming. "I feel like I'm drowning," she admitted. "Welcome to court politics. It never gets easier." His thumb traced circles on her palm, a gesture she was starting to recognize as comfort. "But you don't have to suffer through this alone anymore." Before she could respond, Elder Mordain approached the high table. The ancient wolf's expression was carefully neutral, but Ilara saw calculation in those flint-gray eyes. "Your Majesties," Mordain said, the title for Ilara clearly bitter on her tongue. "The Council wishes to extend formal congratulations on your verified bond. We were mistaken in our doubts." "You were protecting pack interests," Demon said smoothly. "Your diligence is appreciated, Elder." "Indeed." Mordain's gaze shifted to Ilara. "And you, young queen, such a powerful gift you possess. The way you healed His Majesty during the ritual was remarkable, almost as if you'd been treating him for some time." The words seemed innocent, but Ilara heard the trap. "I only did what any mate would do. I felt his pain and responded." "Of course." Mordain smiled, cold and sharp. "Though I wonder, your mother possessed similar gifts, did she not? Before her unfortunate treason." Demon's hand tightened on Ilara's. "My mate's family history is not up for discussion, Elder. The moon has spoken. Or do you question her judgment?" "Never." But Mordain's eyes promised this wasn't over. "I simply find it fascinating how fate works. The daughter of the woman accused of killing one king, now mated to the next king. Such poetry." She glided away, leaving a chill in her wake. Ilara felt Demon tense beside her. "She knows," Ilara whispered. "She knows I've been healing you. She suspects, but she can't prove anything." Demon turned to face her fully. "The ritual confirmed our bond. That's all that matters legally. But politically? We need to move fast. I have 1 month to prove your mother's innocence and expose the real conspiracy. That means finding evidence against Mordain before she finds a way to discredit us." "How?" "She's been covering her tracks for 5 years. Your mother's journal is a start, but we need more. Witnesses, physical evidence, something undeniable." He glanced around the hall, at the nobles pretending not to watch them. "There are still people in this keep who are loyal to my father. We find them. We build our case." The celebration continued late into the night, but Ilara barely noticed. Her mind raced with implications, with dangers she hadn't considered. She'd thought the verification ritual would solve their problems, but it had only bought them time. Finally, as the moon set and guests began departing, Demon escorted her back to her chambers. They walked in a silence through torch-lit corridors, guards trailing at a respectful distance. At her door, Demon paused. "I know this isn't how you imagined your life going," he said quietly. "Bonded to a dying king, caught in political machinations, branded a queen overnight." "It's better than running," Ilara said honestly, "and you're not dying. Not anymore." "Thanks to you." His hand came up, cupping her face with unexpected tenderness. I meant what I said earlier. Whether fate brought us together or not, I'm grateful. Ilara leaned into his touch, feeling the bond hum between them, a connection deeper than logic, stronger than fear. So am I. He kissed her forehead, gentle and chaste, then stepped back. Rest. Tomorrow we start searching for evidence. And Ilara? His expression turned serious. Be careful. Mordain is desperate, and desperate people do terrible things. Ilara nodded, slipping into her chambers where Cass waited, full of questions. But as she prepared for bed, her mind kept returning to Mordain's cold smile, to the poison slowly killing demon, to the secrets her mother had died to protect. She was still awake when the screaming started. Ilara bolted, upright, heart hammering. The screams came from somewhere in the keep. Multiple voices, terrified and agonized. She grabbed a robe and rushed to her door, finding Cass already there, pale and shaking. "What's happening?" he demanded. Before she could answer, guards thundered past, weapons drawn. Ilara followed instinctively, Cass close behind, running through corridors toward the source of chaos. They emerged into a garden courtyard and stopped dead. Bodies lay scattered across white stone, not dead, but writhing in agony, their skin marked with black veins that pulsed and spread like infection. Ilara counted 5 victims, all of them nobles who'd attended the celebration. All of them screaming as poison consumed them from within. "No one touch them!" A healer was shouting orders, but Ilara could see the helplessness in his face. "It's the same poison that killed the old king. There's no cure." "Yes, there is." Ilara pushed through the crowd before fear could stop her. She knelt beside the nearest victim, a young wolf barely 20, thrashing as the poison ate through his life force. "My lady, you can't," the healer protested, but Ilara was already reaching out with her gift, that golden warmth she'd suppressed for 5 years flooding through her. She felt the poison's structure, its magical corruption interwoven with physical toxins, complex, deadly, and exactly like what she'd felt in Demon during the ritual. She began to heal, burning away corruption, strengthening failing organs, forcing life back into dying flesh. The young wolf's screams subsided to whimpers, then stopped entirely. The black veins faded, leaving him weak but alive. Ilara moved to the next victim, then the next. Distantly, she heard Demon's voice shouting orders, heard the crowd's shocked murmurs, but she couldn't stop. 5 people were dying, and she could save them. She had to save them. The last victim was Elder Mordain's own grandson, a boy of maybe 16, tears streaming down his face as poison consumed him. Ilara hesitated only a moment before placing her hands on his chest, pouring healing light into him. She felt the poison fight back, felt how it had been designed specifically to resist healing magic. But her gift was stronger, enhanced by the mate bond, by 5 years of suppressed power finally released. She burned the corruption away, saved the boy's life, and collapsed. Strong arms caught her. Demon, his face fierce with concern. "You shouldn't have. You've exhausted yourself." "I'm fine." She wasn't. Her vision swam, her life force depleted from healing 5 people at once. "Are they all alive?" "Yes. Thanks to you." His voice held wonder and worry in equal measure. The crowd had gone silent. Every person in that courtyard had just watched the new queen perform miracles, healing a poison that had been considered fatal for 5 years. The political implications were staggering. Elder Mordain pushed through the crowd, falling to her knees beside her grandson. The boy was weak but breathing, the black veins gone. When Mordain looked up at Ilara, her expression was unreadable. "You saved him," she said, voice hoarse. "You saved my grandson when your own mother couldn't save the king." The words hung like an accusation. Ilara met the elder's eyes, too exhausted for pretense. Because I know what the poison is. Because my mother taught me its structure before she died. Because she wanted me to be able to cure it if I ever encountered it again. You knew? Mordane's voice sharpened. You knew how to cure the king's poison and you said nothing? I was 17 and running for my life. Alara's own voice rose, fed by exhaustion and fear, and 5 years of suppressed rage. Your people executed my parents. They hunted us like animals. Why would I come forward to save anyone when all I'd get in return was a pyre? The crowd stirred uneasily. Demon helped Alara to her feet, his arm supporting her weight. This conversation can wait until my mate has recovered. Guards, seal the keep. No one enters or leaves until we find out how this poison got into my court. As guards scrambled to obey, Captain Vex appeared, her expression grim. She leaned close to Demon, whispering something that made his face go hard as stone. What? Alara asked. What is it? Demon looked at the 5 survivors, then at the assembled crowd. When he spoke, his voice carried absolute authority. The poison was in the wine served only at the high table. His blue eyes blazed with fury. Someone tried to assassinate the council, and they nearly succeeded. Chaos erupted, but Alara was watching Mordane, watching the ancient wolf's face cycle through shock, understanding, and something that looked almost like fear. Because the assassination attempt hadn't been random, the poisoner had targeted specific people, including Mordane herself, though she hadn't drunk the wine. And if Mordane was a target, then she wasn't the mastermind behind tonight's attack. Which meant there was another player in this deadly game. Someone who wanted both Demon and Mordane gone. Someone who'd been patient enough to wait 5 years for the perfect moment to strike. We need to talk, Alara said urgently to Demon. Now. Privately. He must have heard the terror in her voice because he nodded immediately. They left Vex to manage the chaos and retreated to Demon's study, Cass trailing behind them looking shell-shocked. Once the door was sealed, Alara grabbed her mother's journal from Demon's desk. You said there were 3 people who could have made this poison, the royal alchemist, the king's physician, and Mordane. Yes, but the royal alchemist died 2 years ago, and the king's physician was executed for my father's murder. Exactly. They were scapegoats. Alara flipped through pages frantically. My mother wrote that the poison required both common and rare ingredients. 1 person could make it, but 2 people working together could perfect it. What if... She found the page she was looking for. What if there were 2 poisoners? One who provided the magical components? One who provided the physical toxins? Demon's eyes widened. Mordane and someone else. Someone with access to both courts. Someone who could move between human and shifter territory without suspicion. Alara's hands shook as understanding crystallized. Someone who's been playing both sides for 5 years. Before Demon could respond, the door burst open. A guard stood there, face white with shock. Your Majesty, the Royal Inquisitors have arrived. Inquisitor Cassius demands immediate entry to the keep. He says he has evidence of conspiracy and treason. Demon and Alara exchanged a look of horror. Because suddenly everything made sense. The Inquisitors who'd arrived so quickly after Demon found Alara. The way Cassius had known exactly where to look for life magic. The convenient timing of tonight's assassination attempt. It's Cassius, Alara whispered. He's the second poisoner, and he's here to finish the job. The throne room of Silverpine Keep had never seen anything like this. An Alpha King and his mate on one side, a Royal Inquisitor on the other, with the future of 2 kingdoms hanging in the balance. Cassius stood in the center of the hall, surrounded by his white-robed enforcers, that same beautiful and terrible face smiling with cold satisfaction. Behind him stood a regiment of human soldiers, at least 50, all armed with iron weapons. The message was clear. He'd come for war if diplomacy failed. Your Majesty, Cassius said, his voice echoing through the chamber, I come with grave news. Evidence has surfaced of a conspiracy to overthrow both the human and shifter thrones. A conspiracy centered around. His colorless eyes found Alara. The fugitive you've claimed as your mate. The council, hastily assembled in the middle of the night, stirred uneasily. Elder Mordain sat in her place, still shaken from the assassination attempt, her grandson recovering in the infirmary. "That's a lie," Demon said, his voice deadly calm. "The only conspiracy here is yours, Inquisitor. You poisoned my father 5 years ago. You executed Alara's mother to cover your crime, and tonight, you tried to assassinate the Alpha Council." Cassius's smile never wavered. "Extraordinary claims, Your Majesty. Do you have proof?" "We have her mother's journal." Demon gestured, and guards brought forward the leather-bound book. Complete chemical analyses of the poison that killed King Garrett, analyses that prove the poison required both human alchemy and magical corruption, skills that only a royal inquisitor would possess. "A journal written by a convicted traitor?" Cassius laughed. "That's your evidence? The desperate writings of a woman facing execution?" "The journal is corroborated by tonight's events," Alara spoke up, her voice stronger than she felt. "The same poison that killed your father was used tonight. The same compound I healed from 5 victims. Demon was the intended target, but others drank the poisoned wine." "Yes, how convenient." Cassius's expression turned vicious. "The new queen miraculously able to heal a poison no one has cured before. Almost as if she knew exactly what it was. Almost as if she'd helped create it." The accusation landed like a physical blow. Alara heard the gasps from the council, saw doubt creeping into faces that had just watched her save lives. "You're twisting the truth," she said desperately. "My mother taught me the poison's structure so I could cure it if needed. She died trying to expose you. Or she died because she was guilty. And you're continuing her work." Cassius pulled out a scroll, unrolling it with theatrical flair. "This is a warrant signed by King Magnus himself. It authorizes me to apprehend Alara Voss for questioning regarding her family's treason. The mate bond may protect her from execution, but it doesn't protect her from interrogation." "You'll take her over my dead body," Demon growled, and Alara felt his wolf rising to the surface, felt the bond between them thrumming with protective fury. "That can be arranged." Cassius gestured, and his soldiers raised their weapons. "But it doesn't have to come to that. Give me the girl and we can avoid bloodshed. Refuse, and I have authorization to treat this as an act of war." The throne room erupted in chaos, council members shouting, guards drawing weapons, nobles backing toward exits. Demon's enforcers formed a protective circle around him and Alara, but they were outnumbered. One order from Cassius and 50 soldiers would charge. "Wait!" Elder Mordain's voice cut through the chaos. The ancient wolf stood leaning heavily on her cane, her face carved from stone. "Inquisitor Cassius, you claim Alara Voss is continuing her mother's treason. What evidence do you have beyond circumstantial coincidence?" "She possesses illegal life magic. She healed a poison that shouldn't be curable. She's bonded to the Alpha King, giving her access to every secret of the pack." Cassius's smile was razor-sharp. "That's not circumstantial, Elder. That's a clear pattern of infiltration. And yet she saved my grandson's life tonight." Mordain's flint-gray eyes swept the room. "She saved 5 lives when she could have let them die. Why would a conspirator expose her abilities to save her enemies?" The question hung in the air. Cassius's smile faltered slightly. "Perhaps to gain exactly this: your trust and sympathy. Classic infiltration tactics. Or perhaps," a new voice spoke from the doorway, "she's exactly what she appears to be, a healer trying to survive." Captain Vex strode into the throne room, and she wasn't alone. Behind her walked a figure that made Cassius's face go white. An elderly man in faded inquisitor robes, his body bent with age and suffering, but his eyes sharp as broken glass. "Inquisitor Thaddeus, Demon breathed. But you're supposed to be dead. Reports of my death were deliberately circulated. The old man's voice was rough, like he'd forgotten how to speak. I've been hiding for 5 years, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment. His gaze fixed on Cassius with naked hatred. Hello, apprentice. Did you think I wouldn't eventually discover what you did? Cassius's composure cracked. You're a doddering old fool who should have died with the rest of the traditionalists. I'm the fool who trained you, who taught you every secret of inquisitorial magic. Thaddeus pulled out his own journal, older, more worn than Marissa's. I'm also the fool who documented every conversation we had about your plans to reform the kingdom by eliminating the old guard, both shifter and human. The throne room went dead silent. You wanted war, Thaddeus continued, his voice gaining strength. War between humans and shifters that would burn away the old alliances, leaving a power vacuum you could fill. So you poisoned King Garrett, framed the royal physician, and spent 5 years positioning yourself as humanity's champion against shifter aggression. You have no proof, Cassius snarled, but his hand had moved to his weapon. I have your letters, your plans, the original poison samples you created. Thaddeus smiled grimly. I've been a ghost for 5 years, Cassius, but ghosts see everything. And tonight, when you tried to kill the Alpha Council with your signature poison, you proved I was right. Cassius's soldiers shifted uneasily, looking at their leader with growing doubt. Demon seized the moment. Captain Vex, arrest Inquisitor Cassius for the murder of King Garrett Silverclaw, the execution of Royal Physician Marissa Voss, and the attempted assassination of the Alpha Council. You can't! Cassius backed away, his composure shattering completely. I have authority from King Magnus. You have lies and ambition. Elder Mordain stood, her voice ringing with authority. And the Alpha Council unanimously supports the arrest. Guards, take him. What happened next unfolded in heartbeats. Cassius raised his hands and Alara felt magic surge. Not life magic, but something darker. Binding magic meant to paralyze and control. It slammed into the guards like a wall, dropping them where they stood. But binding magic didn't work on a true mate bond. Alara felt the spell hit, felt it try to wrap around her mind, and felt Demon's wolf surge through their connection with protective fury. The binding shattered like glass against their combined strength. Impossible, Cassius breathed. The mate bond shouldn't. It does when it's real, Demon growled, his form already shifting, bones cracking and reforming. When it's moon-blessed, when it's stronger than any magic you possess. Cassius pulled a crystal from his robes, the same kind Alara had seen before, but larger, pulsing with sickly light. Then I'll destroy the bond itself. I'll sever what the moon created, leave you both hollow shells, and remake this kingdom in my image. He spoke a word in the old tongue, and the crystal exploded with dark light. Alara felt the attack like knives in her soul, magic designed specifically to tear apart mate bonds, to rip away the connection between souls. She screamed, falling to her knees as agony consumed her. She felt Demon's presence in her mind flickering, felt their bond beginning to fray at the edges. No, not like this. Not when she'd just found him. Through the pain, she reached for her gift. That golden warmth that had saved 5 lives tonight. But instead of using it to heal, she did something her mother had warned her never to do. She opened herself completely, removing every barrier, every protection, and poured her life force directly into the bond. The effect was instantaneous. The golden healing light collided with Cassius's severing magic, and where they met, reality itself seemed to bend. Alara felt Demon's wolf merge with her gift, felt their essences intertwining on a level deeper than consciousness, and together they pushed back. The dark light shattered. Cassius's crystal exploded, shards flying like shrapnel. The Inquisitor stumbled backward, blood streaming from his nose and eyes. No, This isn't, you can't. We just did. Demon stood beside Alara, helping her up, and Alara saw that he'd only partially shifted, maintaining human form but with wolf eyes blazing, claws extended, radiating power that made the air itself tremble. But the strain of what they'd just done hit them both simultaneously. Ilara's vision swam, her life force dangerously depleted from opening herself completely. Demon wavered, the poison in his blood surging in response to the magical exertion. They were going to collapse. Both of them. Cassius saw it too. Despite his injuries, despite the blood and the shattered magic, he smiled. You're both dying. Your bond may be strong, but you've exhausted yourselves saving it. And when you fall... He raised his hands again, gathering power for one final spell. I'll ensure you never rise. Time seemed to slow. Alara felt Demon's presence in her mind, felt his determination to protect her even as his own life force guttered like a candle. She felt her gift straining, trying to heal them both, and failing because there simply wasn't enough strength left. They were out of options, out of time, out of everything except each other. Together, Demon whispered through their bond. Together, Alara agreed. They did what they'd done in the verification ritual, what they'd done moments ago against the severing spell. They merged. Not just souls, not just power, but everything. Ilara let her barriers drop completely, and Demon let his wolf fully surface, and between them something impossible happened. Her healing light and his shifter power didn't just combine. They transformed. The poison that had been killing Demon for 5 years met healing magic enhanced by mate bond and shifter strength, and instead of fighting, they synthesized. Golden light exploded from them both, but it wasn't pure healing anymore. It carried the primal power of shifter magic, the ancient authority of wolf and moon. It washed across the throne room in waves, and where it touched, it changed things. Cassius's final spell dissolved before forming. His soldiers dropped their weapons, the binding magic he'd placed on them breaking. The injured guards rose, their wounds closing. And throughout the keep, Ilara felt other connections flaring to life, people she'd touched with her healing tonight, now linked to her and Demon through threads of shared life force. They'd created a new kind of magic, something that had never existed before. Healing merged with shifter power, life magic intertwined with lunar authority, all held together by a mate bond strong enough to reshape reality itself. Cassius fell to his knees, all his power stripped away, leaving him merely human and broken. "This isn't possible," he whispered. "You've made something new, something that breaks all the rules." "Then the rules were wrong," Ilara said, her voice harmonizing with Demon's in a way that made everyone in the throne room flinch. They collapsed into each other, utterly exhausted, but alive, changed, together. Ilara woke in an unfamiliar bed, sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked mountain peaks dusted with fresh snow. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was or why every muscle in her body ached like she'd run for days without stopping. Then memory flooded back, the assassination attempt, Cassius, the severing spell, and the moment she and Demon had merged their powers and created something entirely new. "You're awake." Demon sat in a chair beside the bed, looking as exhausted as she felt but undeniably alive. The poison she'd sensed in him for so long was gone, not suppressed, but actually cured. Their combined power had burned it away completely. "How long?" Her voice came out rough. 2 days. You depleted your life force completely. The healers weren't sure you'd wake up." He moved to sit on the bed's edge, taking her hand. The touch sent familiar electricity through her, but softer now, integrated rather than shocking. "You scared me." "We scared each other." Ilara squeezed his fingers. "What happened after? Cassius? The council? Everything?" Cassius is in custody, awaiting trial for murder, treason, and attempted genocide. Inquisitor Thaddeus's evidence combined with what happened in the throne room was enough to convince even his own soldiers. Demon's expression turned grim. King Magnus has formally apologized and recalled all inquisitors from Pact territories. The political fallout is going to take years to sort out. And Elder Mordain has been surprisingly cooperative. Saving her grandson's life apparently earned you more goodwill than I expected. He smiled slightly. She's actually supporting your appointment as royal healer. Alara's eyes widened. What? You saved 5 lives with magic the kingdom thought was dangerous. You proved that life magic, properly used, is a gift rather than a threat. Demon's thumb traced circles on her palm. The council wants you to train others who show similar abilities, to create a new order of healers who can cure the incurable. The implications were staggering. They want me to rebuild what the Inquisition destroyed. Yes, and more. He pulled her upright gently, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. What we did in the throne room, merging healing magic with shifter power, it's changed things. People all over the keep are reporting new abilities. Guards who can heal minor injuries. Healers who can sense illness through pack bonds. It's like we've awakened something dormant in the population. Alara processed this, her mind racing through possibilities and dangers. That's going to terrify some people. It already is, but it's also giving others hope. Demon stood, offering his hand. Come, there's something you need to see. He led her through corridors Alara didn't recognize, past guards who bowed respectfully. To both of them, she realized with shock. To her. The fugitive healer who 3 days ago had been running for her life. They emerged onto a balcony overlooking the main courtyard, and Alara stopped breathing. Hundreds of people filled the space below. Humans and shifters mixed together without the usual careful segregation. Children played while parents watched, and in the center, someone had erected a statue, rough and hasty, but clearly depicting 2 figures with hands clasped, light radiating from where they touched. They're calling you the Moonlight Healer, Demon said quietly. The queen who united 2 magics, who proved that differences could be bridges rather than walls. I didn't mean to. Alara couldn't find words. She'd spent 5 years trying to disappear, to be forgotten. Now she was being commemorated in stone. They needed hope. You gave it to them. Demon wrapped an arm around her waist, solid and warm. We gave it to them. Together. Below, someone spotted them on the balcony and pointed. A cheer went up, spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Alara wanted to hide, to retreat back into invisibility, but Demon held her steady. Wave, he murmured. They love you. So she did, raising one trembling hand, and the crowd's roar doubled. She saw Cass down there, grinning up at her, looking more relaxed than he had in years. She saw Elder Mordain with her grandson, both of them nodding in respect. She saw former Inquisitor Thaddeus speaking with healers, already organizing the new order. She saw a future she'd never imagined possible. This is terrifying, she whispered. Yes, Demon agreed, but we'll face it together. That's what mates do. Over the following weeks, the transformation continued. Alara began teaching healers how to safely use life magic, carefully passing on everything her mother had taught her. Some students were human, some were shifters, and a few were like her, caught between worlds, possessing abilities that didn't fit neat categories. Demon worked tirelessly to reform the laws that had made such gifts illegal, negotiating with both the Alpha Council and King Magnus's court. It was exhausting, frustrating work, but slowly, the foundations of a new society began to emerge. The most surprising development came from an unexpected source. Elder Mordain approached Alara one morning while she was teaching a class of young healers. A word, Your Majesty? The title still sounded strange from the ancient wolf's mouth. They walked in the gardens where the verification ritual had taken place, where ancient symbols still glowed faintly in the stone. Mordain was quiet for a long time before speaking. "I owe you an apology," she said finally. "Multiple apologies, actually. For doubting you, for opposing your bond with Demon, for not seeing the truth about Cassius sooner." Alara was too surprised to respond immediately. This proud elder admitting fault? "I was so focused on protecting pack traditions," Mordain continued, "that I couldn't see how those traditions were being used against us. Cassius manipulated my fear of change, my desire to preserve the old ways. And because of that, I nearly helped him destroy everything I claimed to protect." "You were trying to keep your people safe," Alara said quietly. "I understand that instinct. Perhaps. But safety purchased through suspicion and isolation isn't real safety. It's just a slower kind of death." Mordain looked at her with eyes that had seen centuries. "You and Demon proved something I'd forgotten. That strength comes from connection, not separation. That the future isn't built by clinging to the past." "I don't know if we proved anything," Alara admitted. "We just survived. By trusting each other. By combining your strengths rather than competing." Mordain smiled, and it transformed her harsh face into something almost gentle. "That's the lesson we all need to learn, and I'm grateful you're here to teach it." As winter turned towards spring, Silverpine Keep became a place of pilgrimage. People came from across the kingdoms to see the Moonlight Healer, to learn about the new magic, to witness the impossible mate bond that had changed everything. Ilara found herself becoming a symbol, whether she wanted to be or not. But she also found moments of simple peace. Evenings with Demon in their private chambers, learning each other without the weight of politics and crisis. Teaching Cass, who'd shown unexpected aptitude for healing magic, how to control his emerging gift. Walking through the keep's gardens with new friends, building a life that felt real rather than performed. The trial of Cassius came 6 weeks after his arrest. It lasted 3 days and revealed horrors that shook both kingdoms, not just the murders he'd committed, but the systematic way he'd manipulated tensions, planting evidence and spreading fear to keep humans and shifters at each other's throats. He wanted chaos, Inquisitor Thaddeus testified. He believed that only through destruction could a new order emerge, with himself at its head, naturally. He saw himself as a visionary, but he was just another ambitious man willing to burn the world for power. Cassius was sentenced to life imprisonment, stripped of all authority and magic. As guards led him away, he looked directly at Alara. "You think you've won," he said, his beautiful face twisted with bitterness. "But you've just made yourself a target. Every traditionalist, every person who fears change, every fool who believes the old ways were better, they'll all come for you eventually. Your new world won't last." "Maybe not," Alara replied calmly, "but we'll face that when it comes. Together." The word seemed to infuriate him more than anything else. As they dragged him from the courtroom, Alara felt only pity. He'd had power, intelligence, and opportunity, and he'd used them all to try to tear the world apart. While she'd had nothing except desperation and compassion, and somehow that had been enough. That night, lying in Demon's arms, Alara reflected on how far she'd come. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real," she murmured. "That I'm not going to wake up in my cottage, still hiding, still afraid. It's real." Demon pulled her closer, and she felt his wolf contentedly wrapped around her consciousness, a permanent presence now, as much a part of her as her own heartbeat. "We made it real, and we'll keep making it real every day. Even when it's hard? Especially then." He kissed her temple. "That's what partnership means. Sharing the burdens so neither of us has to carry them alone." Outside their window, the moon rose full and bright over Silverpine Keep. And somewhere in the kingdom, A child was born with silver-flecked eyes and healing in her touch, the first of a new generation that would know no division between human and shifter, between magic and mundane. The transformation had begun, and it was only just beginning. Spring arrived in the mountain territories with explosive color. Wildflowers carpeting valleys, snow melting into rushing streams, and life returning to places that had been frozen for months. Silverpine Keep emerged from winter isolation as a changed place, and the changes demanded formal recognition. The Grand Council convened 6 months after Cassius's arrest, an unprecedented gathering that brought together not just the Alpha Council, but representatives from King Magnus's court, the Reformed Inquisitor Order, and independent healers from across the kingdoms. Hundreds of delegates packed the Great Hall, with thousands more camped outside the keep's walls, all waiting to see what new world would be forged from the ashes of the old. Ilara stood beside Demon at the center of the hall, facing the assembled powers. She wore formal robes now, silver and gold, marking her as both queen and master healer. But beneath the finery, she was still the girl who'd hidden in a northern village, terrified of being discovered. Except now, discovery didn't mean death. It meant responsibility. This council, Elder Mordain began, her voice carrying through the vast space, has been called to address 3 fundamental questions. First, what status shall life magic hold in our society? Second, what relationship shall exist between humans and shifters going forward? Third, what authority shall the Alpha King and his mate hold in shaping this new order? The questions were carefully neutral, but Ilara heard the real inquiry beneath them. Would the changes they'd sparked be codified into law, or would the kingdoms retreat to familiar divisions? Lord Chancellor Brennan, King Magnus's chief advisor, stood first. He was an elderly human with sharp eyes and sharper wit, known for political cunning. The human kingdom acknowledges that life magic, properly regulated, serves the common good. We propose the establishment of a Royal College of Healers, overseen jointly by human and shifter authorities, where such gifts can be trained and certified. Murmurs rippled through the hall, approval from some quarters, suspicion from others. Demon squeezed Ilara's hand once, a silent signal. This was the moment they'd been preparing for. The Alpha Council supports this proposal, Demon said, his voice resonating with authority earned through crisis. With one addition, the college must be autonomous, not controlled by either throne, but governed by the healers themselves. Magic has been weaponized for too long. It's time to let it be simply what it is, a tool for helping, not hurting. Autonomous? Another council member objected. That's asking us to trust healers with unchecked power. No. Ilara spoke up, her voice clear despite her nerves. It's asking you to trust that people with gifts want the same things everyone wants: to live safely, to help their communities, to raise families without fear. The moment you try to control magic through force, you create the very danger you're trying to prevent. She felt hundreds of eyes on her, judging, evaluating. Taking a breath, she continued. My mother was executed because she discovered a truth powerful people wanted hidden. Not because she was dangerous, but because the system made her powerless to defend herself. We can't let that happen again. The college must be independent, or it becomes just another tool for political manipulation. Silence fell. Then Inquisitor Thaddeus rose, his aged frame straight despite his years in hiding. The Reformed Inquisitor Order supports full autonomy for the college. We failed in our sacred duty by becoming enforcers, rather than guardians. That changes now. One by one, other voices joined in support. Not unanimous. There were still those who feared change, who wanted to maintain control, but enough. After hours of debate, the vote was called. The Royal College of Healers was approved with full autonomy. Ilara would serve as its first Grand Master, with a council of teachers drawn from both human and shifter populations. Life magic was officially reclassified from forbidden to regulated, with protections against persecution written directly into treaty law. It was a victory. But the second question proved harder. Regarding human-shifter relations, Lord Chancellor Brennan said carefully, "There are those in King Magnus's court who believe the recent events prove our peoples should remain separate, that attempting to bridge our differences only invites disaster." The hall erupted in argument. Alara felt Demon tense beside her, felt his frustration through their bond. They'd proven cooperation was possible, had literally merged two types of magic into something new, and still, there were those who clung to division. "May I speak?" A young voice cut through the chaos. Cass stepped forward from where he'd been sitting with the junior healers. At 16, he'd grown tall and confident, his gift flowering under proper training. But Alara still saw the frightened boy she'd protected for 5 years. "I'm human," Cass said, his voice steady despite the attention. "At least I was raised as human. But I have healing magic, a gift that supposedly only appears in ancient bloodlines. And I'm bonded now, not as a mate, but as something new. Part of a network of connected healers that crosses every boundary we use to think mattered." He gestured around the hall. "Half the people in this room carry connections like mine now. We can sense each other's presence, share strength in times of need, feel when someone in the network is hurt or afraid. It doesn't matter if we're human or shifter, the connections work the same way." "The boy makes a point," Elder Mordain said thoughtfully. "What Queen Alara and King Demon created isn't just a new type of magic. It's a new type of bond, one that doesn't respect our old categories. Which some of us find deeply troubling," another elder countered. "Bonds created without consent, without choice." "We all have choices," Alara interrupted, her voice firm. "Every person in the healer network chose to accept the connection, and they can choose to sever it at any time, though none have. Because it's not about control. It's about community, about knowing you're not alone." She thought of 5 years in hiding, of the crushing isolation, of nights wondering if she and Cass were the only people left in the world who cared about them. Separation doesn't keep us safe. It keeps us lonely, and lonely people make desperate choices. If we want real peace, we have to build real connections. The debate raged for hours. Finally, as sunset painted the mountains gold, a compromise emerged. Human-shifter cooperation would be encouraged through trade agreements, educational exchanges, and joint governance of disputed territories. Not full integration, but not continued isolation either. A middle path that satisfied no one completely, but gave everyone something to build on. The third question, the authority of the Alpha King and his mate, proved surprisingly straightforward. Demon and Alara had already claimed no special powers beyond what tradition granted, and their actions during the crisis had earned respect rather than fear. The council confirmed Demon's right to rule and officially recognized Alara as queen and alpha mate, with all associated privileges and responsibilities. As the formal session ended and delegates began filing out, Elder Mordain approached them one final time. "You've built something remarkable," she said quietly. "A new foundation for both our peoples. But foundations require maintenance, constant work to prevent cracks from spreading." "We know," Demon replied. "This is just the beginning." "Good, because there will be challenges ahead. People who refuse to change, new threats we haven't imagined, the simple exhaustion of trying to hold a new world together." Mordain looked between them. "But if you face them the way you've faced everything else, together, with wisdom and compassion, I believe you'll succeed." She left them standing in the emptying hall, hands clasped, their bond humming with shared purpose. Outside, they could hear celebrations beginning. People relieved that war had been avoided, hopeful about the future, willing to try this grand experiment in cooperation. "We did it," Alara whispered. "We actually did it. We started it," Demon corrected, pulling her close. "The real work comes now. Years of small decisions, tiny victories, gradual change. Not as dramatic as fighting Cassius, but just as important. Are you ready for that? For boring, difficult, incremental progress?" He smiled, and in his eyes she saw not just the Alpha King, but her mate. The impossible bond that had started with a dying wolf in a storm and grown into something that reshaped kingdoms. "With you?" he said. "Always." 3 years had passed since the Grand Council. 3 years of hard, patient work building the world they'd envisioned in that great hall. Standing on the balcony of Silverpine Keep, watching the sun rise over transformed territories, Alara reflected on how far they'd all come. The Royal College of Healers occupied an entire wing of the keep now, with satellite schools established in 5 major cities. Over 300 students were enrolled, learning not just healing magic, but ethics, history, and the careful balance between helping and interfering. Cass had graduated last spring and now taught advanced techniques to incoming students, his gift refined through years of practice. The healer network had grown beyond anything Alara had imagined. Thousands of people across both kingdoms carried connections now, not just healers, but ordinary citizens who'd accepted bonds during medical treatment or crisis. The network had become an early warning system for disasters, a support structure for the isolated, and a living proof that humans and shifters could share something profound. Not everyone participated. There were still communities that rejected the new magic, still families that forbade their children from attending the college. But the fear had lessened, persecution had ended, and slowly, inexorably, attitudes were shifting. "You're thinking too hard," Demon said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I can feel it through the bond." Alara leaned back against him, grateful for his solid presence. "I'm thinking about how strange it is that this became normal. 3 years ago, the idea of humans and shifters working together was revolutionary. Now it's just life. That's how real change happens. Not with dramatic declarations, but with 1,000 small choices that gradually reshape what's possible." He kissed her temple. "Though I'd argue we had plenty of drama getting here." She laughed, remembering. The first year had been chaos. Challenges from traditionalists, attempted coups by those loyal to Cassius's vision, near wars sparked by misunderstandings. But they'd survived each crisis, adapted, learned. And slowly, the kingdom had stabilized into something new. Movement in the courtyard below caught her attention. A carriage was arriving, formal, bearing the royal seal of King Magnus. Alara and Demon exchanged glances. "Right on time," Demon said. "Ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be." They descended to greet their guests formally. King Magnus emerged from the carriage looking older than Alara remembered, the weight of ruling a fractious kingdom evident in his lined face. But he smiled warmly as they approached. "Alpha King Damon, Queen Alara." He bowed, a gesture of respect that would have been unthinkable 3 years ago. "Thank you for hosting this summit." "It's our honor, Your Majesty." Alara returned the bow. "The guest quarters are prepared, and the other delegates should arrive by evening." This was the culmination of 3 years of negotiation, the first formal treaty summit where humans and shifters would negotiate as equals, not adversaries. Representatives from 12 kingdoms were coming, all of them influenced by the changes spreading from Silverpine Keep. If this succeeded, it could reshape the entire continent. If it failed, it could trigger the very war Cassius had wanted. The next few days were a blur of diplomatic maneuvering, carefully worded proposals, tense negotiations, and private conversations where real progress happened away from official transcripts. Ilara found herself playing translator between cultures, using the healer network to sense unspoken tensions and address them before they erupted. On the third night, as formal sessions ended and delegates gathered for a banquet, Elder Mordain pulled Ilara aside. "There's something you should see," the ancient wolf said quietly. She led Ilara to a private chamber where a young woman waited, barely 20, with the distinctive silver-flecked eyes that marked natural life magic users. But there was something else about her, something that made Ilara's breath catch. "This is Liana," Mordain said. "She arrived this morning from the Eastern Territories. Show the queen what you showed me." Liana held out her hands, and light bloomed between them, but not the golden warmth of life magic. This was different. Silver threads that wove through the air, connecting to invisible points around the room. Network magic, but evolved. Refined. "I can see the connections," Liana explained, her voice trembling with excitement. "Not just feel them, but see them. And I can do this." She touched one silver thread, and suddenly Ilara felt a surge of information. Not words or images, but pure understanding flowing through the network. Liana had figured out how to transmit knowledge directly through the healer bonds. "Do you understand what this means?" Mordain asked quietly. "She can share skills, experiences, entire educations in moments. We could train healers in weeks instead of years. We could spread critical knowledge across the kingdoms instantly." Ilara did understand. This was the next evolution. Not just healing, not just connection, but transformation of how people learned and grew. The implications were staggering and terrifying. "We need to be very careful with this," she said slowly. "Knowledge transfer could be wonderful, but it could also be weaponized, used to control, to indoctrinate, to erase individuality." "Exactly what I thought," Mordain agreed. "Which is why I brought Liana to you first. This needs guidance, ethics, careful development." Ilara looked at the young woman, brilliant, powerful, standing at the threshold of something that could change everything. She saw herself 3 years ago, frightened and alone, possessing gifts she didn't fully understand. "Come to the college," Ilara said. "Not as a student, as a researcher. We'll explore this together, carefully, with full transparency about what we're learning. And we'll teach others the ethics first, before we teach them the technique." Liana's face lit up with relief and gratitude. "Thank you. I was so afraid someone would try to control this, to use it for exactly what almost destroyed us before," Ilara finished. "We've learned that lesson. Power without wisdom is just another form of tyranny." That night, lying beside Demon after the banquet ended, Ilara told him about Liana and the new development. "It's scary," she admitted. "Every time we solve one problem, new complications emerge. Will it ever end? Probably not." Demon pulled her close, and she felt his wolf's contentment through their bond. "But that's not failure, that's growth. The world keeps changing because we're alive and adapting. Stagnation is the real danger." "Philosophical tonight?" "I had wine with King Magnus. He quoted poetry at me for an hour." Demon's tone was dry, making Ilara laugh. "But he also said something important. He said that 3 years ago, he saw you and me as symbols, the impossible bond that proved change was coming. But now he sees us as people. Just two individuals trying their best, making mistakes, learning as they go. Is that supposed to be comforting? It means we get to be human, or wolf, or whatever complicated thing we are." He kissed her forehead. "We don't have to be perfect symbols. We just have to keep trying." The summit concluded successfully a week later, not with a single grand treaty, but with a dozen smaller agreements: trade deals, educational exchanges, mutual defense pacts. Each delegate returned home carrying seeds of change, ready to plant them in their own territories. As the last carriage departed, Alara and Demon stood together in the courtyard, exhausted but satisfied. 3 years, Alara murmured. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime. Sometimes like yesterday. Time's funny that way. Demon took her hand and she felt the familiar electric warmth of their bond. Especially when you're living through history instead of reading about it. They walked through the keep together, greeting staff, checking on students, being present for the community they'd built. In the gardens, they found Cass teaching a class of young healers, his voice confident as he explained energy flow. He'd grown into himself, this boy who'd once hidden with her in a northern cottage. In the great library, Inquisitor Thaddeus worked with reformed inquisitors, documenting everything they'd learned, creating the transparent archives that Cassius's secrecy had prevented. Truth preserved for future generations. In the training yards, Captain Vex drilled mixed units of human and shifter guards, their cooperation so natural now that no one questioned it. The impossible had become routine. Everywhere Alara looked, she saw the world they'd built. Not perfect. There were still conflicts, still prejudices, still people who rejected everything they represented. But better, kinder, more connected. As sunset painted the mountains gold, they returned to their private chambers. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: a border dispute, a debate about college curriculum, 1,000 small decisions that shaped the future. But tonight was theirs. "Do you ever miss it?" Demon asked quietly. The simplicity of hiding, when your biggest worry was staying invisible. Alara considered the question honestly. Sometimes. Life was simpler then, but it wasn't really living. It was just surviving. And now? Now I'm terrified half the time, exhausted most days, making decisions that affect thousands of lives and hoping I'm getting more right than wrong. She turned to face him, cupping his face in her hands. But I'm also happy, connected, part of something larger than myself. I'd take this terror over that lonely safety any day. Demon's smile was radiant. Good. Because I'm planning on keeping you terrified for at least the next 60 years. Only 60? You're getting soft, Alpha King. He laughed, and the sound filled their chambers with warmth. Outside, the moon rose over Silverpine Keep, the same moon that had witnessed their verification ritual 3 years ago, that had blessed their impossible bond, that continued to shine on the world they were building. Somewhere in the territories, a child was being born with silver-flecked eyes. Somewhere, a human and a shifter were falling in love, their bond no longer forbidden. Somewhere, a student was learning to heal, to connect, to transform fear into hope. The age of hiding was over. The age of balance had truly begun. And in Silverpine Keep, 2 souls who'd found each other against impossible odds settled into sleep. Their bond humming with contentment, ready to face whatever tomorrow would bring. Together. Always together. Sometimes the most dangerous place to hide is in plain sight. But sometimes, the most transformative thing you can do is stop hiding altogether. Alara learned that kindness isn't weakness. It's the strongest magic of all. And that the bonds we fear most might be exactly what we need to become whole.